Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. The Practical Guitarist Podcast is brought to you by Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Great Lakes Guitar Pickups provides fantasy tones at prices a practical guitarist will love. Featuring top-notch construction, attention to detail, and a fully custom product, if you can dream it, Great Lakes Guitar Pickups can probably build it. Follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Are you a regular listener? Why not? David here reminding you of all the ways you can participate in the Practical Guitarist Podcast. Subscribe using your chosen podcast app. Review us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or Google Play. Find our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Practical Guitarist or on Twitter as @PractGuitarist. Support the show. Merchandise is available in our Threadless store at practicalguitaristpodcast.threadless.com. And donate to us via Patreon, available at patreon.com/practicalguitarist. Reach out to us directly via email at questions@practicalguitarist.com. What are you doing now, Jim?
I know I laugh and you didn't even do it.
I'm David.
I'm Jim.
Meow, 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 meow. This is Mrs. Smith.
Awesome. I thought that was my cats for a minute.
You do a very good job.
Thank you. Hello, fellas.
Hey, Mrs. Smith.
Jim, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So today we've got with us Mrs. Smith, who is a well-known shredder. And Mrs. Smith has been around a while. So we're going to ask Mrs. Smith, could you tell us a little bit about your background on guitar, how you kind of got started and got motivated to play guitar and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. I really came, people first noticed me, I was playing on the sidewalk. I was a street busker out in, it was initially Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is a lovely seaside bohemian resort town.
Oh, yeah.
I had fallen on really desperate financial times. And so there I was, shredding for my supper. And then I had also performed at a Guitar Gods contest in Miami. And some folks were there, Yngwie Malmsteen and Steve Vai and a bunch of other really terrific players. And so that's all started to kind of get some attention for Mrs. Smith. But previous to that, what it comes down to, it's very unusual that a lady such as I would play guitar in this fashion, I realize. But what it comes down to is in the 90s, I was kidnapped and held for ransom by a Norwegian death metal band and suffered the Stockholm Syndrome. And that sounds like, a funny joke. It's not funny. People laugh at it, but it's not funny. It's very painful. It's very triggering. I had to bring it up in all my press interviews. I basically go into I have a kind of it's sort of like a womb room. It's basically all pink with soft lighting and cushions. And after this interview, I have to go into that womb room and cry for about it's about 10 times the length of this interview. So I'll be in there for about 10 hours. Crying.
Oh my gosh.
Norwegian death metal is a serious problem. I mean,
climbing the walls, and I do it for you. So I hope you're happy with that. But yeah, so that's how it all came about. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'd say that's awesome, but
no, it's not awesome. It's not awesome that you got to spend 10 hours in a room. But it is awesome that you were able to share that with us. But what I wanted to ask about is I saw one of your videos has a thing where you talk about Facebook, Facebook Live, and you answer some questions. And one of them was you were in a farm in upstate New York for a little while, and you did some stuff there. I can say this: I grew up on a farm in upstate New York, believe it or not.
So you know.
Yeah. I know how bad it can be, and I can know about needing a safe area where you need to get away, and that's where the guitar was for me. It was it was a true escape. It was either that or go out and smell shit for hours on end.
Yes, or listening to mothers screaming, out into the wind, or father falling down another flight of stairs and the crash of a whiskey bottle and all that.
Oh,
now,
my father threw my mother down a flight of stairs.
Now, how upstate were you? Because I was rather far upstate.
Oh, Ticonderoga. So it's Ticonderoga is 2 hours south of 2.5 hours south of the Canadian border.
Well, I was just up there recently because I was in Montreal doing.
Okay.
So I took the train all the way to Montreal, which is an 8-hour ride, and it was quite lovely. But it did spell reliving, my time up there, the desolation. No.
A lot of people, I don't think they can understand. I think listening to some of the stuff you've spoken about, we're probably you're younger than me, but not quite as young as David. And there's being up there at that time. Those towns are small, really small, and really rural, and there's really not much you can do. So.
Yes, I describe it as like my Antonia on bath salts, or if you know Little House on the Prairie, this would be Little House inside a terror dome.
Oh God, I feel I think we probably got some pain stories.
Yeah, Jim just posted about some of his memories in the farm in upstate New York, where he basically did nothing but be a farm person. And milk cows pretty much all day long, and it may or may not have led to him joining the military.
Yeah, it definitely pushed me away. And so you were out in P-Town, right?
Yes, Provincetown. I had a friend there, a local comedian, and he had a mule shed that he had converted into a little painting studio. And he said, well, I love you, Smithy, but, you've kind of run around and you have nothing. Now, I thought I had lost all my money. It just had turned out that the money was safe, but it was it's hard to describe, but it was in this bank and they had promised me, they said, oh, our hard drives are underground. And they can't be trifled with or penetrated by hackers. But what happened is, because of climate change, all of the hard drives got frozen. So my assets were literally frozen, and I couldn't get any of the money. And it was in there, and they said, we see all the money in there, but we can't get it out of the cable. And so while they were thawing the cables, I had to shred for my supper, and it was scary stuff.
Yeah, I don't I don't wish busking on anybody. When I was overseas in the military, I had a wife at home and a house to take care of. So I would busk overseas to make money to go out and do things. I was over there.
I know somebody right. Yeah, I mean, I know somebody right now who's busking for money when work, because they get paid per client, and so if they don't have any clients, they're out busking. And actually, sometimes they do quite well with it. But
yeah,
I think it really shows you if you can hold people's attention or not.
Sure,
that is true.
And I learned a lot about guitar playing I just ended up practicing in public. God, all the videos that are out there.
Yeah, I've seen a few of them. I don't know if they were during that time. There's a lot of videos on your YouTube channel.
Many of them are quite impressive. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you.
Very impressive. And so that's kind of what we were going to next. So, Dave, you've got some questions.
Well, I mean, I have a ton of questions about what you're doing now specifically, but I wanted to kind of talk about the gear stuff for a minute. So you use a little Vox 85, right, for a lot of the stuff, and I've actually seen you using that on bigger stages, mic'd up.
Yes, that's I don't have a relationship with them. Not that it matters, but that is just a little battery operated digital amplifier, and it has little effects in it. It's a DA5. It's been discontinued, but you can get it now. I want to say that the pink one doesn't sound as good as the black one. Now, the black one is the OG,
the original
shred rig. So it's been through a lot. It's been around the world, and I played it in Provincetown, Los Angeles, New York City, London, Budapest. So I've trucked it everywhere. What's nice about it is it can fit in a suitcase and you carry on your guitar, you check your bag, and you can put a wah-wah pedal in there, and then you got the delay on the effects or different sounds. But people were often shocked that all of that sound was coming out of that little amplifier, and the tone was so good. And it has one of the channels on it. It just has a kind of a scooped, distorted tone that sounds quite good with the wah-wah pedal and the kinds of pickups that I was using.
Okay. So
I got another one, Dave, before we go further, because I want to go into, now we've talked about pedals. I have to ask, so on your EP, there's a song called Midnight in a Garden of Miku.
The Miku pedal.
That's it. I've got to ask you about that.
That thing is infamous.
First of all, I've been thinking about getting one, and of course, they're not in production anymore. So, I mean, they're not exactly, being sold for millions on, they're not exactly clones on Reverb yet. But before I went down that road, I have to ask you, have you used it live? And can you get consistent sounds out of it? Are you?
No,
you know what I mean?
No, you can't. You can't play it live. There's too much latency. So what happened is, and this is in a little narration skit on the EP. A drummer that I work with quite a bit, Paul Amoris.
Okay.
He had someone had it at a gig. A guitar player showed up with a Miku pedal and said, "Dude, you got to hear this." Starts playing it. Paul is falling apart. It's so funny. It's so crazy sounding and bizarre. And so he called me up and said, "Mrs. Smith, you've got to get this pedal. You've got to make a song about it." And originally, I was going to get my piano player and maybe some cats and a green screen and just make something up and make it sort of campy and sort of easy and a little bit silly. And then I plugged it in and I began to play this melody. Da 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 da. And I thought, well, there's something here. So I recorded it into the computer, but you cannot play with a click because of the latency of the pedal.
Right.
So I got as much of it as I could in time, and then you have to move the little chunks around to line up with the rhythm. And then I orchestrated the whole song around that melody.
You described, I think in one of the videos, you described it as painting with your audio software.
Yes, painting with the little blocks, little MIDI blocks. And then you don't have to even know which chord or understand music theory at all. You just say, does this sound good? I want it to sound sad. I want this to sound happy, etc.
Right.
I got to say, that's probably, having listened to some of the stuff on there, there's two songs that I've heard off the EP so far, and I'm already in love with it, which is why I'm getting a copy. I'm going to buy one. I've got to ask you again, then, because of the painting thing, you brought up the painting thing, Bob Ross.
Yes.
We got to ask about that, because first of all, I'm a fan of Bob Ross, fan of yours, and I'm a fan of Bob Ross, who obviously we lost several years ago. And the video is great. It's got some campy moments. It's got some funny stuff. You got the telethon thing going on. I'm going to ask you about a person in the video. Somebody in there, I know I recognize her. There was a woman that there's like three people. There's two guys on the outside, and there's a woman sitting in the middle. I recognize her from somewhere. Either that or she looks exactly like an actress I know. Were those people you knew, or did you hire that out? I mean,
yes, that's Annie Golden from Orange is the New Black.
That's where I know her.
Silent Norma. Yes.
I knew it. That's her.
And she's performed with my band. We did a song by heart. Which did we do by heart? Now it escapes me which song we did. But yes, she got up with my band. She's an incredible singer.
Really?
Never in New York. Well, she sings on Orange is the New Black, but she was in a band called Annie and the Shirts in the East Village. Okay. She's in the movie Hair, the original movie of Hair. And she has tremendous vocal range, a very brilliant, high, clear rock belt. She's also on Broadway quite a bit, and she's really amazing. And so I asked her if she would be in the video, and she was very generous because it was a 2-day shoot. I mean, they were long days, and she was very, very, very sweet to be in that.
I'll bet. That is a great song. So where did the inspiration for that come from? I mean, were you watching like PBS and it was a Bob Rock thing and you said, oh, I need to do, or how did that come about?
I had my song Cat Jam, and they say, make music about things you care about, things that you're passionate about. I'm very passionate about public television. I'm very passionate about Bob Ross. And I also saw his television program as a kind of medication for my extreme anxiety. And now I'm able to avail myself of multiple psychotherapists. I have a whole support team. I have an incredible psychiatrist who's an MD. I have an amazing therapist who's a PhD in counseling psychology. And then my aromatherapist has an MFA in sculpture. And they're all just tremendous. But I realized that my fans out there, a lot of them don't have the resources. They don't even have health insurance. So I was thinking, my kittens, my fans are crying out to me, Mrs. Smith, I've got depression, I've got anxiety, I can't function. And I thought, Bob Ross, it's free, mostly. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
You had to go to the library, the public library, sign into the free computer, and just get so blissed out you're drooling on yourself until they drag you out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, so I'm not a painter. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. But when it comes to Bob Ross, I guess I get the same thing you do from it, because it's like watching. It's like the people that listen to animal sounds when they go to sleep. For me, it's just soothing to watch him go. And if you know anything about his backstory, obviously he was an Air Force to an E9. He retired. He retired to Alaska. Most people, they're like, no, don't send me to Alaska. This guy, he loved it up there, and he went there, and he was originally from Florida, so that was a kind of a, and he made a decision at that point, leaving the military, that he was never going to yell again. And
oh, wow.
I think that's why he's so soothing, is because he found a tone of voice. I mean, I don't know where you get it from him, but I know that I feel like when he talks, it's like, I wish I had a dad like that, because my father was a yeller.
Yeah. It's the tone of voice. It's even the way that his hands and stuff move in the videos. Like, there's a whole community of people using him as a relaxation technique. And I mean, I totally get it. And it's, yeah, I will say, Bob Ross technique, Cat Jam, all of these songs are well liked by even my non-guitar playing friends.
Really?
I played them for many of them, and my wife, for example, loves the Bob Ross technique. My daughter loves the Cat Jam, and my wife showed it to some of her friends, and they actually like Bob Ross technique quite a bit as well. So,
well, I don't. It's odd, because I don't think, if one were to, for instance, sit back and say, well, how could I make a Bob Ross song for the internet that would be a viral sensation? Or how could I write a song about cats that will, catapult me to, internet fame? And I think perhaps I'm just making things difficult for myself on purpose. But I do not believe that Bob Ross, as a song, sounds like what one would imagine a Bob Ross rock song to sound. That's
why I think people react the way they do to it, because it's very much an in-your-face kind of interpretation of what Bob Ross was doing, and so it's interesting. I'm a big fan of it, and I'm glad that you're doing the tutorial series on YouTube about it too.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm behind on those. I always run out of steam with those. I've got to get the next one up. The next one.
We know about running out of steam with videos.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, talk about social media.
Yeah. No. Definitely. That's actually how we came to hear about you and your music, was through our own social media fans, who were we put a call out and we said, who are people that you would like to have interviewed on the show, and your name came up immediately. followed by a bunch of videos. So we were like, oh yeah, no, this has got to happen. And to be completely honest, like I think you're probably the biggest guest we've had on that has like the most social media presence right now. I mean, you've got everything from, you know, the little Gucci ad that you did, and the you know, the tutorial videos you've done, as well as your music videos are all available on YouTube. Yep. Your website clearly lists that you're on Facebook and Instagram. How do you think that's affected your popularity and your recognition, I guess, amongst people?
I think it's the whole thing. I mean, I early on, I had done an off-Broadway show about Carlisle, and at the time, I was working with a kind of a parasitic sort of person, and I didn't realize how dangerous managers can be. But this was somebody who did not understand Instagram, and I remember I signed up for Instagram, and this person said, oh, I wish it was the 1930s and we could just do Broadway and I didn't have to worry about Instagram. And I in my head, I thought he's fired. I didn't fire him right away, but later on I did, because I thought, well, listen.
Very wise decision. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where it's at. And I did not understand Instagram. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't understand hashtags, tagging. I didn't understand, I was somebody early on who thought, well, here's a video of me in a play singing. Why don't people want to watch that on YouTube? Well, you didn't light it and film it for online, so it's not suitable. So they can't see you. Your face is blurry. The audio is bad. I made all of the mistakes. So then that's when I realized you have to make video for the internet. And that's not to say, to be, as a ploy, but it has to look and it has to present itself in a certain way in order to function within that. So the first ones that I did of that was the Dear Mrs. Smith, which was an advice column about cats that I did on Facebook, and that did very well. And then once the guitar started to happen, for instance, I did a Guitar Gods concert in Miami and I hired a film crew. And so then I had 2 cameras and I could turn it into something afterwards. Right. I would say, Mrs. Smith was here, performed, and here's a snippet of it. And people went, wow, and they thought it was, like done by like a TV show or something.
That's really sharp.
It's all about online for me.
That's really sharp to hear that you like actually hired a crew to do that. Cause like a lot of us are doing this stuff ourselves. I have a lighting kit. Actually, it's right behind the screen behind me. And Jim has a lighting kit. He just actually flipped his lights on as we're doing the podcast.
We don't put up the video from these. So
no, usually we're not hosting video from our typical episodes. But we've done some other stuff where we've looked at a piece of gear, or like I do a series of videos called Buzz Facts where I look at different buzz pedals and compare them. And it's one of the things where we realized immediately that we were getting bigger response from more production value. But I had never thought, like as an independent musician myself, if I'm playing a gig, to hire, photographers. And I have friends who are filmographer, photographer people. I mean, that's.
I want to cut in for just a second, and you hit the nail on the head, Mrs. Smith, isn't it? And I'll see these bands and they put up videos, and for some reason they share them, which I can understand. If a fan records a video and it's not that good, I get it. But when you use that as promotion and it has terrible sound, like you said, the lighting is awful, the picture is grainy, or it's out of focus. Thank you.
Yes, I was going to say.
or if your microphone is way away from your face, like mine was just now.
You want to
there'll be some compression.
You want to re-say that stuff?
I was saying that, So what I was saying is when bands put up stuff that's got, like you said, bad lighting, bad sound, it's grainy photography, and grainy video, and they've got just the whole thing is bad. And it's something that, it's like, okay, this was a grainy photo of my kid the first time I changed him or something, or the first time my cat jumped up and used the toilet for real. That would be different, but it's it's a moment in time that you want, and then you use it as promotion. It doesn't work. And you being smart enough to know and to recognize early on, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't look good. And that's why people aren't watching it. It's not because I wasn't good or I wasn't engaging. It's because it was hard to see or to listen to or whatever.
Well, and do you want to get into the deep end of this, my philosophy? Yeah. Okay, so it's a little bit of both. So if something is too slick and too produced, people don't trust it.
Yeah, that doesn't look real.
Yeah, they don't think it's real, or they think it might be manufactured because commercial brands create fake viral videos. They try to manufacture virality.
Sure.
So if you're somebody who, for instance, doesn't have a huge following, but you go out and spend tens of thousands of dollars on equipment and you're shooting, you're getting someone to film it and edit it and you put it all together, it would seem sort of odd maybe to people looking at your channel. It's like, well, these are really well done, but this person doesn't have a big following. This is sort of trying too hard, or it's desperate.
You want to be one step above where you actually are, basically.
At the same time, so there's on the one side, you could go too far with production values. And on the other side, YouTube is made of videos of people speaking into a web camera. That's very raw and very real and very personable. And so, it's got to be a little bit of both. People have to feel like it's authentic. It's coming from a real person. But they have to be able to, I would say more, somebody taught me this early on. People will tolerate a bad video image, but they will not tolerate bad sound.
Right.
And with the vocals, especially if you're speaking and you want people to know what you're saying, even having a little lavalier microphone, going into a Zoom recorder or going into the camera itself, or a shotgun microphone, making sure that, your back is into the window. So you're just silhouetted, face the window of natural light. So you're lit, put the camera opposite you. There's all these little things, and there's a lot of tutorials about it, but capturing the fretboard and a person talking is a logistical filming challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
You have multiple cameras to do it right. I mean, that's what we found out very quickly. So, I mean, you don't need an insane amount of equipment to do this anymore. I mean, I just bought the new iPhone because it's got a 4K 60 frame per second camera on there that's actually halfway decent.
Yes, you could use an iPhone with a little tripod, okay? And then you could perhaps get a consumer high definition camcorder. Now, DSLR cameras are wonderful. However, they can go out of focus if you have a very shallow depth of field. You could get just a consumer HD camcorder that would record in 1080p, and it's just autofocus. Yeah. And then you've got your two cameras, and you don't need a camera person if you don't have a pal that can do that for you.
And also, you were talking about Zoom recorder. I got my Zoom. I guess this is an H6 in front of me right now. So, yeah, I mean, we're kind of doing the same things. It's just very interesting to me that like we'd originally said, that it was that that you'd had this forethought to do that. At an event that was actually going to feature other players too, right? I mean.
Yes, and of course that was the event where I met Steve Vai backstage. Not a camera to be found anywhere in sight on the meeting.
Yeah, of course.
We snapped a terrible iPhone photo from it, and then to this day, people think that I'm him in some elaborate disguise. But
I heard this.
But yes, so I guess it wasn't until I really started to. Well, there's other things with Instagram or Facebook, and Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are all different. I think I'm the best on Instagram now. I get the most response. Subtitles sometimes help a video do well. They can be very time consuming to add.
Yes.
But if it's only a minute long, it can really help because people will watch it with the sound off.
Yep.
And I think, but all that said, I think it's important to have something to share, something that is vivid or interesting. That could be, your music, which people are musicians, so of course they want it to be their music. But it could be personality. Jared Dines, for instance, who's a pal of mine. He's a great musician. He's very funny, and he also just has a personality.
Right. I was trying to think. So you've done videos like that too. There was one where you had rebuked a rat.
That was hilarious.
Well, that's more of like a cinematic skit, but yes.
Yeah, and then that's kind of the same thing. Like you're building on the personality of what you do, not so much exactly what you do. You know what I mean?
Yes, and so I consider it's also good to think of your channel as having 3 focuses: an A, a B, and a C. So if you look at people who do really well and they're prolific on social media, they might have 3 interests. So for instance, for my Instagram, it would be these days mostly guitar. Now that could be me, or it could be things that I repost or share.
Right.
Or I may capture something that I like that I see on YouTube and then broadcast that. That could also be, and then cats are very important to me.
Right.
So Carlisle, but all cats. And then I would say sort of fancy lady problems. And that could be a fabulous new outfit, jewelry. That could be a clip from an old movie with a lady going crazy. But sometimes people, it will be, their music, and then they love the gym. And then maybe they have a dog or a boyfriend that is the side character. But typically, what that allows people to do is to have to not just be monotonous.
Yeah, it breaks up what's going on, right?
Yeah, I think it personalizes and humanizes you. It makes you a person that people can like, versus just, you're not just the person saying smoke these cigarettes. You're the person that's saying, hey, you know what? I'm a guitar player. I also love cats. I also love jewelry, and so on and so forth. Which leads me to my next thing: Norm's Rare Guitars. So you did a video on Norm's Rare Guitars, and
that video is great, by the way.
I'm sorry, is that not legendary? I mean,
they go into Norm's Rare Guitars and be like, "These are all old."
Yeah, I don't want to. And I love that you said these are all old guitars,
dead objects.
Exactly, and that's something that we've tried to say a million times. I think that there's always those 2 sides of the community. Knowing as a musician that there are, these are brand new. I got brand new guitars shown off on Norm's Rare Guitars. I think that's something else.
I call them old. I don't really call them vintage anymore. So
what was that Ibanez you were showing off? I mean, I loved that.
That was an AZ.
That was AZ. I have one coming. It's coming soon. They're sending it to me soon. I get a blue one.
It's on my short list. I'm hoping that Ibanez will do one with a Floyd Rose for 2019.
That thing was gorgeous. The one that you were holding in that, I loved it.
I'm getting an even brighter blue one. It says "Blue is my bluest eye."
Wow.
And I love it, and I can't wait to play it with like a black gown, or maybe even something red or something dramatic. But it's a beautiful blue guitar. It's their Prestige Series AZ.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little bit more of a fixed bridge. It does float. The tremolo does float. You can pull up on it.
Can you pull super high on it like your gems you have?
No. And I'm choosing that on purpose in order to explore other realms of playing and other realms of tone. Because the other thing is, Mike Origo from Ibanez pointed out to me. He said the number of frets does change the tone of a guitar.
Yes, it
having
does.
24 frets, which I have on all of my guitars. Now, I don't go up to that 24th fret very often, if ever.
Right.
But it's there. Now, there's 2 things that impact the tone of an RG or Gem series Ibanez type guitar. A hot rod, a super strat.
Right.
The 24 frets, and then all of that metal that is in that floating tremolo, I believe does have an impact on the tone. Now, I like it. It cuts through and it's very intense.
Oh, yeah.
But I was interested in exploring some different tones. And so this AZ will have a single coil on the neck, and then a single coil in the middle, and a double coil on the bridge.
Right. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, so I played a couple of them already, and they're beautiful guitars. The only little caveat I had with them was that the I guess the neck is oiled, and it was just building up like a lot of grime from my hands while I was playing it. And I played one for a good hour, but I still thought it was a fantastic guitar. It may still be something that I wind up getting at some point.
Yeah, you've mentioned that quite a few times. That would be an awesome.
I'm a broken record, Jim. I know.
No. I mean, I'm just pointing out to Mrs. Smith that you have mentioned it a few times, and because I doubt very much Mrs. Smith has been listening to our channel very long.
Yeah.
But anyway, that said,
before we go down the gear path, I do have one question about social media outreach.
Yeah.
The Gucci ad. Look, can we just talk about that briefly? I got to say, when my wife saw that, she goes, "Is this for real?" And I think that's a credit to what you're doing with your social media, which is that it integrates so well into your persona that you already have on your channel, and the fact that you've already, you did this ad with Gucci and it aired. I just think it's just perfect. So I wanted to comment on that.
Yes, so that is real. It's not photoshopped or trick photography. I was playing guitar on the sidewalk in the East Village of New York City, and I was seen by Petra Collins, who's a fashion it girl Instagram star. I think she has 700,000 Instagram followers, and she is a Gucci model herself and also a photographer. And it was she had done several films for Gucci, but this was quite ambitious. It was a multi-day shoot, a big crew, and it was in Budapest. Her family is from Budapest, and that's actually her. I think it's her grandmother and her niece and nephew or cousins.
Okay.
I think in that video along with me. And so she asked me. She said she wanted to do something with me over Instagram on a direct message. I Googled her and almost fell off my chair. And she said, "I think it's going to be something with Gucci." Then I fell down the stairs and I pictured something, in Bryant Park, maybe with some fans and tapestries blowing and maybe a fashion show, something.
Right.
And then Gucci into my inbox, an email, hotel and travel arrangements for Budapest. And then I fell out the window.
Yeah.
I was what a fantasia. And to the way they made it such that I was standing on water and the camera elevates and I'm playing, of course, those beautiful Ibanez guitars.
I could not imagine anyone but you doing that Gucci ad. And that's a credit to both their marketing team and you as an individual. And I mean, you're a perfect spokesperson for Gucci in that ad, but in general, I hope that they would use you again to do something. And I
thought that it was fun. I brought the floral gem guitar and the white gem. Now, she told me that she saw me standing on water and that there was water involved. And so I was very reluctant to walk out onto that water with the floral gem guitar because
because you've had that one for a long time, right?
It's irreplaceable. It's original issue. So for that, and they were also saying, "Oh, we might actually have you playing." And I thought an amplifier and all this water. I was getting really worried. And things come together in a very wild way with fashion.
Yes.
And so they're very creative. And so I brought the White Gem Junior because it just is. If that fell in the water, I'd be quite sad, but it would be easier for me to replace, or for Gucci, for instance.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yes.
So that's why I brought both of them. But I thought, how fun, how crazy to be playing these two sort of iconic Ibanez guitars in this high fashion context.
They are high fashion guitars.
Signaling to people who get the references, and then other people who don't. It's just sort of looks like a cool guitar.
Right.
Yeah, with the floral pattern and everything, it kind of works.
Well, when I was in they bring you in to do a fitting. They have a whole floor of the hotel, and I went in, and they had just racks and racks and racks of Gucci. They wouldn't let me take pictures. Racks and racks, and I had sent them a little bit of what I would and would not wear. I have rules for myself.
Yes.
I don't go sleeveless, not at this age. Nobody wants to see a woman's arms. And I don't do low cut. I don't do very clingy fabric. I don't,
Right.
it has to be tasteful.
Right.
So they had brought all these choices. And I said, well, we should make sure it matches with the guitar. And I took out the floral gem guitar, and the Gucci stylists gasped. They went, "Oh, this guitar."
Yeah. Well, it's like we designed it.
They thought it was, and of course, Gucci right now, which is under creative direction of Alessandro Michel, it's rococo. It's extreme. It is a little bit like Granny's closet has exploded. So there's flowers and cats and wild and sequins, and it's just very visually almost overstimulating. So the guitar went perfectly with it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Now the you also have the Carlisle.
Yes, the Carlisle caster. Yep.
Yes.
And that's
what I called it.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, that's what she called it too.
And that's an RG. Now let me look up. I always have to look up the name because it's long. It's an Ibanez RG Prestige, and I want to say it's an AH something, AHM. It's transparent white.
Okay.
All right. And so it's ash. And mine is quite heavy. And what I didn't know is that ash will
ash
vary.
is very heavy. Yeah.
So it's quite heavy. But it's a translucent white, so you can see the grain. And then what I had Ibanez do is they made a graphic and they custom applied it as a sticker and then clear coated over it. Right. And so it's actually a guitar that anybody could have if they wanted to buy the RG. I'm happy to send them the sticker or graphic. And then you just take it to someone who can make it for you, until Ibanez decides to make it. I don't know if they ever will.
Someday.
Yeah. We were just talking about that for this guitar when I get done taking all the finish off and stuff.
Oh, you're going to do a custom sticker?
Yeah, I'm going to do something custom,
Yeah, it's fun. You can do almost anything now with digital printing. So
isn't it crazy? It's incredible. So, all right, David, you had a...
I have one more gear-related question. The Mesa Barbara amplification, I've never heard of this company. What can you tell us a little bit about what they offer?
Wow. I mean, it's these amps are something else. I mean, they really roar. Now, I had heard of Mazzotti guitar devices, and my dear friend Ben Leck, who's just an incredible guy, and he helped me with a lot of these relationships. Early on, when I was playing through a battery-operated amp on the sidewalk, he got in touch and said, who's helping you with your endorsements? I said, nobody. I have no one. I'm no one. And he said, let me give you a hand. And he got me some pedals. He got me connected up with Ibanez. And then he said, I think Mesa Barbara. So they sent me a 30-watt 2-channel amplifier called a Skill.
Okay.
It's Skill. And then I didn't have a speaker. And so I was running around and I brought it to my guitar player, Randy's apartment. He has all these speakers. Victory. He loves Victory amps.
Okay.
So we plugged it in and I started to play, and wow. The distorted channel on this amp really is that Edward Van Halen sound, right, where you get incredible saturation, but clarity. It doesn't cut out the middle. It cuts through. It's present. I don't need any pedals, really. I put a little delay, maybe sometimes some chorus. I have some spacey effects that I use sometimes, but basically I don't use any effects. I use the distortion on the amp. Now, even better, you can turn the distortion way down and use it as a rhythm channel for your rhythm playing. And then when you're ready to lead, get a tube screamer and boom, put it over the top. Mm-hmm. And now these are made by hand with exquisite parts. If you were to take it apart, now Guitar Player magazine did a story on the M0 100 watt head. I encourage you. It's an editor's pick. Mesa Barbara M0 100 watt. That's the beast. They took it apart.
At them right now.
They took it apart and they said, there's no reason to use this top of the line parts. on all, but it does translate. Everyone who hears these amps. When I was at NAMM, people were agog. And it really is that Edward Van Halen sound. It's the sound. Look, if you're going to buy an old Marshall and then spend all kinds of money modding it and making an attenuator and putting a bunch of things in front of it and mangling it and taking it apart, you can save yourself the money and just get one of these. But cool. They're not cheap because they are well made.
Yep. Very cool. Now, we're no stranger to having well made gear too. Like, we understand that, because I remember when we were talking about the format of our show before we start the interview. We always like try to balance quality and price, and that's a huge problem. Like, a lot of times things that are very inexpensive are very low quality, and vice versa. So.
Yeah. Well, it's a balance, because some things can be very expensive for no good reason.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then some things are expensive for very good reason. It could be that the guitar is just so exquisitely made, and it's so much attention, and it will last, and it will stay in tune, and it will sound wonderful.
Right.
And feel wonderful to you. And then it can also be the case that something is expensive, and you go, what the heck did I pay all this for? Now, you have to ask yourself. Now, it's easy for me to say this because I don't pay for these things. They send them to me. But what I would say is, if you've got that gear fever, it's hit you, right? And you think you're going to reach for that $800 all tube amp, okay? And I won't name names, but I used to play one. An $800 all tube amp that you think is going to sound great. Guess what? It won't. Guess what? Your tone will disappear. Your band won't be able to hear you. The audience will be running, screaming with their ears bleeding. If you can just hold on and maybe do without that latte, maybe find ways, or maybe get a side gig on Saturdays or Sundays, delivering papers or whatever it is that you can kind of constrain your budget, make a little extra money, and just wait a little while longer to get something truly fantastic.
Right. May we suggest busking?
Busking.
That's a little full circle. Yeah, I mean, there's always that thing where, I bought believe it or not, I bought this, here it is, for $30 online, because
Jim is pointing at a
Squire
Affinity. That's a piece of crap.
Wait, bullet, sorry.
It literally hurts to hold it. The frets are so bad. When the guy handed it to me, because he goes, I bought it for my son. I don't understand why he didn't want to play. He handed it to me. I went, ow! It's right on my hand. It's literally slicing my hands. It hurts. But anyway, I know it's not that bad most of the time, but for most players. But the point is, just like you were talking about, if you're going to buy something, mod the living crap out of it. Unless, like I'm going to do with this, I'm going to use it as a pickup mule, and then I'm going to take all the paint off it and do all kinds of weird things to it. I'm literally going to put not Fender over, just to say that it is not a Fender. Don't be confused, because I want to make it a Woodard guitar, not to sell it, not to try to brand it or anything, just to say this is mine. This is mine. No one has one like it. It's mine, and you can't make another one like it.
The other thing to keep in mind about expensive gear, especially when it's being sold to you by very famous people, is that, or rich people, tragically, if you tragically, or perhaps poetic tragic, is that if you are to go back in time to what is their best work, you will find that it was often played on borrowed, stolen, mangled, half destroyed, crappy gear. That that their best work was often recorded on not ideal gear. For instance, "Surfing with the Alien" by Joe Satriani was not recorded on an Ibanez guitar.
No.
I mean, there's one part of a song that he just used one guitar that had a whammy bar, and the rest of it was recorded on the amps. That the same thing. Steve Vai Flexible. I mean, this was
Steve Vai. He did not have the
So it's all to say, get the gear that's fabulous, that makes you play well,
that inspires you.
Also, sometimes fighting against gear that's not ideal is not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's not.
And one should never blame gear as a reason to not make music and put it out there.
No, not at all.
No,
Jim and I've had this conversation many a time. Like, there's a growing community of people that are gear hobbyists and not necessarily guitar players, because they're not concerned with actually playing the instrument. They're concerned with what they've got behind them. And so we're completely in the opposite direction. It's like, now learn to play the instrument. That's more important.
That's why we call ourselves practical guitarists, not
because we practice a lot.
Because we practice. Exactly. And we practice and we practice. And so that comes into my next question. I know you're a lefty who plays righty.
Yes. So, wait, how do you know that?
Because you had a video where you said in your Facebook live thing.
Oh,
you said I'm a lefty, and so that lends to some very different ways of you playing, because you don't, as far as you were saying in there, you don't do a traditional alternate picking.
I don't tend to alternate pick. It exhausts me. I think it's a very tiring thing to think about. I do what I call glancing. I glance the pick. So I might be picking the first two notes, or, I can't really slow it down to figure it out. I know that Paul Gilbert has said that it's okay to not pick every note, that
that's right.
You're going to use a combination of hammer-ons and picking. Yes. And you just, at some level, the physics change. Okay. I mean, I don't know that you can just metronome, because the fact is, as you begin to pick faster and faster and faster, the physics with the strings change. It's not going to be the case that the physics will be the same at a very slow tempo as it is at a very fast tempo. Mm-hmm. And that's where you're playing it on the string, the thickness of the string.
Yeah, you're also catching the vibration of the string at a different, frequency.
Yeah. So, I mean, at some point, you just got to go for it. Just let go.
Jim, who's that? Who said something similar to that?
I think there was some guy, David Hill.
Yeah,
who said that. I can't remember.
I think maybe that was
it might have been him.
Moment in the show's history when I said that.
It might have been him. I don't remember. But yeah, we talked about that. But I think what and you can chime in here. I would appreciate if you chime in here. Is that a lot of people say you got to play slow to play fast. What I think that people misinterpret is, you don't just play slow forever. You have to know how to play it clean, but you can't run a 60-second quarter mile until you try to run a 55-second quarter mile. And then, but there are certain mechanics that go along with going fast before you can get to fast, but that doesn't mean never try to be fast. Does that make any sense?
I completely agree. There's also playing it fast and then cleaning it up.
Yes.
Cleaning it up. And then, again, there's certain things with physics, with the strings and the pick, and there's just some things that you can't change. I mean, there's just some things that will never be playable. They just won't be. And so, and it's like, if you're spending all this time playing it slow, it may never be able to be played fast. And you just have I've spoken with people who are very frustrated, and they get very neurotic about it, and they get very like beating up on themselves. Like, I don't understand, why can't I play fast? And it's like, just, if you've worked on it for a long time and you can't get it, just let it go. Admit defeat. Right. Move on. And I say that also, I would never try to replicate something someone else has played.
We had Steve Stein in your seat probably 3 weeks ago, and he was echoing the same thing. Sometimes you have to find what you're good at and work at that. And then that's the way that you find a way forward.
Right.
Yes. And that has to do with the size of your hands, your fingers, the type of guitar, lefty, righty, what is your strong hand? How are you going to hold the pick? I had a guitar player at one of my shows. He's quite a fantastic guitar player. He plays in a band called L Train here in New York City. And I saw him busking and doing some Jimi Hendrix stuff on his Strat, and I was blown away, and he's fantastic. And he came to see me playing, and he was quite fixated on how light my touch is. Mm-hmm. I'm barely I don't choke down on the pick the way some people do. And I never really, until I started looking at myself playing on video, I never really noticed it. It was like, oh, okay, well, that's just how I play, and I don't have to change it. It may be something that makes people want to listen to it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to ask, going right along with that. I had two more questions, so I'm going to ask one. Dave's going to ask one. One of my questions is you have obviously you have a light touch. This is more of a statement, obviously. You have a light touch. I could tell in the videos you have a very light touch. So I was watching a video. I think it's one of the 3-part instruction on the Bob Ross thing, and there's like there's a intro thing, and then there's 2 parts. So in the first video, you have another person because you admit that you don't play the solo the same way twice. And then you have another person that steps in and plays a solo over your backing track. Can you tell me, because I've seen that person in a live video with you. Is that?
Yes, that's Randy Wilcox.
Okay.
Yep, Randy Wilcox, and he's on Instagram, Randy Wilcox Music. And so he, when I play with the band, he is the guitar player in my band. He's a fantastic shredder. He's endorsed by Chapman Guitars, Rob Chapman, who we love.
I was going to say he was playing a Chapman, right?
Yes, we all love Rob. Oh, I adore Rob so much, and he's so encouraging to me and so sweet. Of course, he's British, and so he gets my humor in a special way, like a Monty Python or like Absolutely Fabulous. But yes, so Randy Wilcox, fantastic guitar player. And when I play with the band, it's not always that I play with the band, and that has to do with availability and also what is the deal with the venue and portability. And I'm not at the stage now where I can transport a band around with me. It's just not feasible. So, but we often do perform in New York City. We're going to be doing a show in the spring, another full live band show in the spring. But yes, I wanted him to do a solo for that song because we've played so much guitar together and we've had so much fun. And it's customary to offer a guest solo to your colleague. It's collegial. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote that part for him, and it's and actually I'm going to post the video this week where he describes how to play his solo. It's a chromatically ascending. The song completely changes all of a sudden.
Right.
Because what I realized was that progression was getting a bit monotonous. So then I wrote this other progression where it's ascending chromatically. Da na 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 na. And I thought this is also a fun obstacle course for Randy. It's I almost made it as like a challenge or like a maze.
And he said challenge accepted. So
and he came up with this wonderful kind of bumblefoot, buckethead, wild.
Yep.
But he is fully in the key, fully playing, and it's musical. It's atonal because it's not in any key.
Right.
I think it's absolutely brilliant.
No, it is good. It is good.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's one of the more memorable moments in that song.
And it's like the way I described it to him, I said, what I want it to be is like, I'm speeding. I'm like, I'm in a Ferrari, right? And and the top is off and I'm racing down a highway, like in a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie. And then the camera pulls off and it goes off into a dirt road and you're on a motorcycle and you're racing, Randy. And then you go up and you leap into the air and then you join me back on the highway and we're playing together. And that's what I feel like.
Your description is exactly what I think is missing from when players say, why don't people like my playing? It's because what you just described, that's what the playing should take you to. That's where the solo should take you, not just, okay, here's some fast playing. Blah, blah, blah. It's here's what I want you to feel, or I want the listener to feel when they get done listening to your part. And he nailed that, by the way. He definitely nailed it.
Well, and then when it all comes together and we're harmonizing, the song has reached a crescendo. And then and we ascend to the highest heights together doing that. I don't know what the style will be, like kind of like Scorpions or something, like harmonized guitars, or I don't know who it is, Iron Maiden or somebody.
Yep.
I love that sound. And then the song deconstructs and it's me in this fugue state. But I had a whole philosophy of the song too. And I've explained it to people and they say, Mrs. Smith, it makes no sense. But there is a philosophy of the song, which is the opening sequence is anxiety and terror that is cured by a Bob Ross bath, a kind of warm bath of Bob Ross. And that begins to build resilience and strength and then allow for shredding to occur with ease. And then Randy comes in and it ramps it up. And so, but yes, so that I think what you're talking about, what's missing with music is vision.
Right.
Or a sense of narrative or story. And instead what you have is people merely executing their favorite parts.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up because I was gonna interject. You're absolutely right. We don't have that. We don't have humor in music too, which is another big issue. It's either somebody who's just injecting comedy into the music via lyrics, but very rarely do you find somebody who can actually make the music itself funny. We used to have that. We had composers like Handel that had one of his pieces is called The Joke. And Steve Vai has obviously cultivated a lot of stuff like the Flexible record. And I see Bob Ross is not that type of song, but I definitely see like Cat Jam being more of a humorous approach to music.
And also, these songs are written for live performance. Because I'm a performer first,
right?
I'm always thinking about how will this translate into, and I think of everything from the backdrop videos that will be played. There's a very wonderful Cat Jam has got all these internet cats in the video that I have that I play with, and how will sound and how will it come off to the audience? How will I tell a story? And I think that if people are looking for, I think Jim is going crazy.
Going, yes, with both
but
hands in the
this
air.
is what's missing now. And what's happening is we've never had more instrumental music, but it's saying nothing. It's
right.
A lot of it is
nothing. Oh. And now, if you ever were searching for a period in history to say something,
now it's perfect.
Now,
yep.
Right around you. We are in the midst of ecological catastrophe. We are in the midst of a political turmoil, the likes of which we've never seen before since the 70s. Everything is falling apart, and people are making music about arpeggios.
And in pop music, unfortunately, back then, because I grew up in that point, back then there was pop music that was talking about whether one agreed with or didn't agree with the political vision of the music.
Now it's afraid. Now the companies are afraid to put it out.
Yes, Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation. There's a piece in the New York Times about Rhythm Nation. And it's so fantastic when you go back and look at the dancing and the militaristic outfits and the song and the attitude and everything that she was singing about. Now, okay, so where do people start with a story? You could, as an exercise, take your favorite documentary, take your favorite fictional film. Say perhaps you love The Lord of the Rings, or you love an episode of Game of Thrones, or for instance, there's an episode of you love a sci-fi show. Take one 40-minute episode and break it into, it's probably in 5 parts.
Yeah.
It's probably in 5 acts. Break it into 5 acts and trace the rhythms, trace the time signatures, trace the tension. Is there comedy? Is there a point where there's tension and then it releases into a lighthearted scene? And map them and trace them. Don't make the song about the episode. It could be about something entirely different, but map the feelings and then write chords or rhythms or drum parts and then make melodies over it. And you could create an album that could be a television show and no one would know.
Yeah, that's words that are beyond what we've heard on this show before.
It could be a novel. And also don't listen to other musicians read novels, watch documentaries, be inspired by real people, visual art. I walked into the MoMA the other day. Every time I see the Jackson Pollock at the MoMA, I burst out laughing because it's so absurd. It's the size of the wall.
Yeah.
And you think the audacity of the man who created this to do this entirely with splattering and say, this is my art. Take it or leave it. Kiss my butt.
Right. Kiss my ass if you don't like it. David.
And take that in.
So I'll say this. I was not really, I mean, I was aware of Buckethead, right? And then all of a sudden David says to me, he goes, because Buckethead was coming to my town, and he says, you should go. So I went.
Because it's a multimedia experience.
And you have to always go.
It goes right to what you were just speaking. I stayed from beginning to end. And it's because there was a story. The whole thing was just like you said. You were watching a movie. You were engulfed in a novel.
And it might not necessarily be a linear story either. And that's
well, what I love about Buckethead, I'm forever grateful to Buckethead because he pulled the guitar world into the deep end of abstraction and performance art, into such a deep realm of abstraction and bizarreness that I came through and they were like, well, this is normal compared to him. So it was like, crazy lady with a backstory, no problem. We dealt with Buckethead. But what you know about Buckethead is that everything he's doing, he is absolutely obsessed with. He is obsessed with theme parks. He is obsessed with Disney. He is obsessed with horror films. He's obsessed with the guitar. He's obsessed with Bootsy Collins and funk. And he just takes everything that he loves. And I'll tell you, the moment in his show when I completely levitated, I was floating off the ground. It actually, well, first of all, the first 20 minutes are taken up with the sound of a foreign horror film soundtrack. You're just in the dark and you're just hearing, oh,
some of it's from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, actually.
It's some, Romanian horror film that I'm sure he's obsessed with. I didn't even know it was. And what happens is your concrete mind begins to become unglued. And then he hits the stage. His tone is amazing. His tracks are amazing. He's playing completely in the pocket. And it's really more like seeing a DJ than a guitar hero.
Yep.
Because he has no persona attached to. He's not showing off. He's doing nunchucks. He's dancing. He's playing, making crazy sounds. It's out of this world. The songs and the riffs are so powerful. It's about riffage. It's not about melody, really. It's about, that's why it's like a DJ. It's like electronic dance music.
Yeah.
And then he starts to hand out presents to the audience.
I loved that part.
And he plays the soundtrack to the electric light parade from Disneyland.
Yep.
And it's this calliope music that is so insipid and so childish and so bizarre. And there are these cartoon voices coming in. Oh, hey kids, it's the electric. Oh, hi, Mr. Snail. And it's like, oh, hi, children. Are you? And it goes on for 5 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And what happens is your mind begins to become deranged. And I just began to laugh and think, this is an artist.
Very much so. Very much so.
He takes you with him on his journey. And I think that's what you do for listeners. You take them with you on your journey. You're like, okay, I'm gonna start here and end here. We were talking about on a previous episode AOR and how important album-oriented rock was in the 70s and the 60s, where each song wasn't. You had your standalone songs, but the album didn't necessarily have to have like The Wall or like Dark Side of the Moon, where they had a single theme, but it took you on a journey with the artist. And we've lost that. And it's just like, here's song A, here's song B. We're going to put the first 5 songs are going to be singles. The other 5 songs are going to be, B-sides, so to speak.
Well, I don't want to talk out of, tell tales out of school, but what I'll say is with a lot of guitar playing, can I be totally honest? Can I be completely honest?
Oh, of course.
I mean, it just seems like people are filling time.
Yeah.
They're making albums because the task at hand is to make an album. And what I hear is basically backing tracks with shredding on top of it. But I'm not given a sense of drama. I'm not given a sense of story. And I'm not given a sense of an artist who must tell this story. Now, my playing and my tone and my production may not be at the level of some people's, but I'm trying to say something. But a lot of this stuff, it's like, I don't know why this exists. I think that's
just
very
to show off.
Yeah,
I think a lot of it is just showing off.
It's an economic thing. Like you've got guys that are guys and gals who are supporting themselves with literally doing what you just said, which is to put backing tracks together, perform a song, record an album, and then tour it. And they don't really stop and think like about the art side of it,
right?
Because they've got people who depend on them financially in a lot of cases. And also themselves. I mean, they don't want to be broke. And so it becomes this cycle of maybe they had one good record in the beginning where it was like, okay, this is what I've worked so hard to achieve. But after that, it's about being able to pay the bills, But
what I will say is that go back to some of those early days and some of those early people and some of those early pioneers. And everyone who's listening, if you save your dough, I'm going to tell you what you can do. You can buy a copy of Logic Pro for $200.
Yep.
You can buy a USB interface for $50, and you will have more technology in your computer than, Pet Sound was recorded on.
Right. Or Eddie Van Halen had, for that matter. I mean,
exactly. And you don't need to get all the plugins. You really don't. I mean, you can. But what will happen is people will use that as a reason not to create. And that's delaying. And so I said to myself, you've got to finish. You could mix this album until you're blue in the face. A lot of those guitars were recorded directly into Logic using Logic amps.
I've done that before. It's
not. In some of them, I did the cabinet simulation and the IRs with the Mega Bar, and some of them I mic'd it and I did all kinds of different things. But most of the main guitars on that album are direct in through a $50 USB that I got at Guitar Center. And it's honestly, if you have something to say, it really does not matter that much.
No, it's more about the performance than about the tone.
And kind of whipping yourself up into a state of into that creative mood of saying something.
We talked about it earlier on this show in some of our early episodes where I talked about rehearsing with the band and really working at learning how to bring out the emotion in my playing, even when I'm playing by myself with, just running scales and stuff. Like, how do you do that? And there's you're right. There's this emotional state you have to whip yourself into where now, okay, all the mask I put on is stripped away and it's just me, and my feelings coming out.
And I'll say this, I took several sort of acting classes and mask classes. Of course, I'm fascinated with Buckethead. I'm fascinated with Alice Cooper. I'm fascinated by Ghost. I'm fascinated by people who put on a mask in order to reveal something more true about themselves. So you could do that. You could, for instance, say to yourself, I'm going to create an album or a song as a character.
Fictional person, right?
Tori Amos does this. Her songs are characters that have stories, and she channels them. And that way you take yourself out of it. It's not you. So you could do that. But with acting and actors and performance, there just is, you just go there. You fully go there. You believe, you practice your scales and you get your technique, and then you press record. And I'll tell you what I better do when I press record is I've learned now to have that camera recording me because things are liable to happen that I can't repeat.
Unless you have some record of it, right?
With the music video. But you press record and you just lose yourself into the sound and you stop thinking and judging.
Right. Exactly. I think that a lot of people, they maybe it's partially due to the fact that they don't want people to know how they really feel. And so it's like, because most of us know that our feelings are expressed through music. And you know, I grew up in a household with abuse and alcoholism and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to a farm. My mother remarried, and there was different stuff. You know, I don't want to go too far into it. It's difficult, obviously, but those feelings. You know, I wrote some songs later on that had to do with those feelings and how I felt about the world in general and my closer relationships. And I think that might be it, because we as people, and especially those of us like David and myself, you know, we're at least I can speak for me, is that it's hard to admit as a husband that I have frailties. And so, you know, because that admits that I have weaknesses. And if I have weaknesses, my children or my, you know, my significant other sees weaknesses. And you probably see this as well. And once somebody sees a weakness, sometimes, like you were talking about your manager before, people will take advantage of those weaknesses. And we don't want really to have those things happen. So I don't know. Those are part of it. I think also there is a general sense that if you say something that a certain group, especially in today's society, doesn't like in the mainstream media, then suddenly you're afraid. Oh, if I say something that Group A or Group B or Group C doesn't like, then I'm going to be disassociated and they won't like me anymore. So I'll just write generic,
homogenized
junk. I'll just write, and the lyrics to my song will be work, 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 work. Sorry, I hate this.
Yes, and it's so odd to me. What's so odd to me is that the heavy metal of the 80s is filled with all kinds of paranoid, you know.
Oh yeah.
Listen to Metallica or Megadeth.
Operation Mindcrime.
Operation Mindcrime. Well, guess what? We're there.
Yeah.
We're there. It's happening. Your phone is Operation Mindcrime. Everybody's on medications. Everybody's glued to these phones. I think Muse has done work. They had they did a thing about drones.
Yeah.
They have a song. He has a song called Drones, and it's just these voices. Killed by drones, killed. And it's almost like classical music.
Right.
And it's about people. You picture the coldness of this robotic plane, and just that it drops these bombs that kill people, and there's just total silence. So some people are doing it. I think Ghost, again, is something very interesting going on there. I think of course, heavy metal, the guitar, it's being invaded by, you know, people in communities that previously haven't been there, you know, women and that's all very, very, very good.
Yes, it's awesome.
We must not lose imagination.
No.
Point of view.
Right. Well, you've given us a good blueprint on how to start approaching doing those sorts of things, and to think outside of the box and think about music in a more abstract way to produce something that's less abstract. And I think that's great.
And also, you generally will have, if you're stuck on the last song, right? Say like you think, oh, I need one more song. You probably have it. It's probably that riff that you play every time you pick up the guitar. You know, there's that riff.
Right.
There's a song on my album called Home Again, which was just a riff that I played for about 10 to 15 years. Never knew what I was going to do about it. And I finally just said, well, I need another song. I'm just going to record this computer,
put it together. Right.
See where it leads me. I've got all these riffs. I go, well, I know this is the start of something really cool. And it's just a matter of taking the time and the focus to sit down and get it done.
Yep. So we've asked all of our guests this question, and we're going to ask you the same question, which is, do you have a funny story or experience that you can share, whether it be on the road, in the studio, or anything surrounding music?
Oh, yes. This was funny. So I was at the House of Guitars in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
Now I was up there doing a clinic, and they're so sweet there. And of course, Metallica recorded there, and Ozzy's been there, and everyone's been there. Everyone's been to House of Guitars. They had a Steve Vai gem up on the wall that I tried to make off with, but they didn't let me. And you never know what is going to come of these types of gigs. I mean, it's not as if there's some big promo machine behind me. They put up a flyer and sent an email, and so you never know who's going to show up, how many people are going to show up, and you're hoping that it isn't going to sort of turn into a Spinal Tap moment. And so I'm up there on stage, and there's this guy staring at me, this older guy, and he's just standing, and I don't know, he looked like he worked for a railroad company or something. I mean, he's just kind of like beaten down by life, and he's watching me. And then just completely out into the open, he says to me, but just so loud, he says, "Nobody around here knows who you are." I said, "Well, how are they going to get to know me if I don't come here?" But I'll tell you what, at the end of the gig, they sure knew who I was.
Oh, that is funny. He was probably some guy from a cover band out there that was like, "Oh, I'm better than you."
Nobody around here knows who you are.
So I got to ask, even though that was supposed to be the last question, you play a Gem Junior occasionally?
Well, the Gem Junior has been turned into an Eddie Van Halen Gem, which is totally against the law.
I've seen that guitar. And
that's what that one is. Okay.
So my friend Nicholas Townsend, he has Nicholas Guitars. He's on Instagram, and he's a luthier. He makes fantastic guitars of his own, and they're beautiful, and they're made totally by hand. And he also happens to be somebody who can do anything you want to a guitar. And so I had this white Gem Junior, and it just was too much of a Steve Vai lookalike thing,
right?
Because he plays a white one, and I was sort of like, well, what do I do with this? And I thought, wow, well, what would be the coolest thing in the world but to take this white guitar and paint it with Eddie Van Halen stripes, and then you got the best of both worlds, the best of both worlds. And so Nicholas did it, and then I went to NAMM with it, and everybody thought it was for sale, and it caused all this chaos. And I think Ivan has endorsed me very soon after, just as a way to control me and contain me.
Yeah, like that.
But I have to say, it is the coolest guitar on the face of planet Earth.
I really like the look of that one, and actually, I'm excited to hear that that's a Gem Junior underneath all that. The reason why I asked this question is completely selfish and personal. I'm actually looking. I kind of want to get a Gem Junior, and I'm kind of looking at the pink one. So. Just to get away from the kind of like typical Steve Vai-ism, but
sure,
yeah. So
yeah, and then you could do all kinds of stuff with it. You could put a sticker on it. You could paint, change it. But they're really good. You got to keep them set up properly.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
I think we put a Gote tremolo on it. We put a different trem on it. And then he changed all kinds of stuff. He changed a whole bunch. I've got to do a video about that guitar. I've got so many videos to make. I can't even tell you.
I'll be waiting with bated breath on that one.
That is a fantastic guitar. I was going to ask you about it myself because I haven't heard. There was another question I had for you. I didn't get to, and I want to ask you real quick if you're okay with that.
Yes.
So you've done these. You did the thing where you won a shred guitar contest, right? Where
Shred for Your Life, yeah.
And the guitar, believe it or not, David, the guitar they gave away, of all things to give away to shredders, was a Telecaster. But anyway, which
John 5 supposed to be winning. I mean,
well, let me explain. So that contest is really, it used to be called Guitar Battle. And, and what it is it's Mark Razzow and Wilder Zobe, who's a producer. He works with Run the Jewels, and they all have great bands in New York City. But it really is much more of a rough and tumble, hard rock, punk, hardcore, thrash, more of a classic kind of vibe. And they always did Guitar Battle for fun. And it was as much about like a kind of Halloween contest, dress up in some crazy costume, act out. This time around, a guy dressed up like a wrestler, he body slammed his guitar in the middle of it. So it's not really, Shred for Your Life is a misnomer because almost nobody there can shred. But I turned up and I could shred, and then they found my whole personality to be, appealing. So I won. But Fender is their underwriter. And so they gave me the Telly. But let me tell you.
You play that Telly. I've seen it.
Because that Telly can be tuned down. This is why I want to get the AZ, because I was able to tune it down to D. Drop D tuning. Because the fixed or the locking tremolo, you have to have somebody, do it for you.
Jim, what do I complain about Floyd's?
So I wrote all the things, the song, all the things on my EP because of that Telecaster. And so I love it,
So you got the EP out. Can we expect an LP? This is going to happen, right? Because I'm waiting.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm not right away, obviously.
Obviously we really want to hear. So I do want to ask this. So when you you've probably been to more than one of these things where people come up, and I know you told us one story. Have you ever had someone who, when you were at, these jam fests and these things you do, where someone just came off as egocentric or egomaniacal to the point that you were just like, I don't
have to name names. We just
no. You don't even have to name the thing that you were doing. But I just wondered, because the old joke about, how many guitar players does it take to change a light bulb? It's 6, 1 to change the light bulb and 5 to sit around with their arms crossed going, yeah, I probably could have done it better. So, you've got to have a story like that.
I have dealt with, I would call it sort of like an indirect ambient disapproval from, like at NAMM, I was like, oh, I can kind of tell this person doesn't like me for some reason. And then later, they'd be like, yeah, like, they really don't like you, or they think that you're a gimmick, or, and often what it has to do with is that person has not been successful, sure. Or maybe there's something wrong with their face, or something is not, that people don't want to look at them or something. And they maybe they missed the 1980s boat or something.
Yeah.
And they see, here comes Mrs. Smith getting all this attention. And is it because I perhaps look unusual for this world? That is part of it. But I think, the brands that endorse me, and the people that work with me have all said, if you were just strumming bar chords and not playing the way you play, then there wouldn't be anything to hold our interest. And so that keeps me going, because sometimes, you also have to put up with bad internet comments. And if you're in the wrong mood, I'll tell you what, when I go onto my YouTube now, I make sure to check in and I say, all right, what time is it? Are you going to bed soon? Because if you encounter a bad comment, and if you're in the wrong mood, or you haven't had something to eat that day, or you're tired, or you're just feeling like, why am I bothering to do any of this? And then you see some comment that's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And it really can cut through. It really can. You've got to have a thick skin, the people who make these comments, I had a fan the other day on my Instagram where I posted a little skit of me doing a funny little dramatic speech. And he wrote, I wish he would just play guitar. And I went off on him. I said, since the beginning of this, I have played music, I have done comedy and observations and cats. And if you don't get that by now, excuse me, there's not enough guitar playing on Instagram. There's too much.
Yeah, exactly. There's enough people just playing guitar. Well, that comes full circle to what we talked about earlier. And that's there's no personality. Here's a person playing guitar. Why do I like this person? We just recently lost Roy Clark.
Well, he's like my brother-in-law. I mean,
he's an idol.
Talk about humor and music, and there were people who say the same thing. Well, I think the humor upstaged his talent. No, it doesn't.
That is his talent.
Humor upstaged Frank Zappa. It doesn't. It doesn't. That is what that person wished to create, and for you to judge them and compare them to somebody else it's a great violation of that person's soul. because I'm doing what I do. And I'll tell you what, a friend of mine early on, a supporter, came to see my show at Joe's Pub. And he said, well, it's like a cabaret show. It's a comedy show. It's not just like a rock show, shredding show. And I said, no, if you come to see Mrs. Smith at a club, it's not going to be like going to see Joe Satriani. I'm not going to play guitar for 2.5 hours. I'm going to do comedy. I'm going to talk to the audience. I'm going to sing. I'm going to play. There's going to be funny videos. It's going to be a whole experience. And that's because I'm doing what I do and what I like to do, just like Buckethead.
Right. I totally appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that you're so into that side of things. I think what you said about there being too many guitar players on Instagram, I absolutely agree with you. Not everybody needs to be featured on Instagram. I mean, you have to have something to say, not just speaking out of turn and running your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be like asking, I mean, so I'm young or old enough, I should say, to have seen Eddie Van Halen in the 70s when Van Halen was still new. And, you know, all of us were rushing out to, oh my God, he's incredible. And if I saw Van Halen and Eddie Van Halen didn't run around and kick his feet in the air, or I saw Angus Young and he didn't duck walk, or I saw, you know, and you know, wearing the schoolboy outfit, or I saw
if you
Pink
saw them not being
Floyd
true to
and
themselves.
Roger Waters wasn't pissed off. I mean, I just don't know if that would be the same thing. I'd be like, this isn't them. This is just, I could listen to a recording and get this.
Exactly.
So we're nearing the end of our allotted time. With that,
well, I hope I didn't, go off too much.
What? No,
it was fantastic.
No,
we love having you. You are welcome back whenever you like. I'm hoping you can get to the Chicago area so that I can get the opportunity.
Is that where you boys are? You both in Chicago?
I'm in Chicago. He's actually in Virginia Beach.
Okay. Yes. Well, we should talk, Dave, because I was trying to book a gig at the Empty Bottle, which a friend of mine recommended. He thought that would be a good venue for me. But then I also thought the Dugout, is that what it's called?
I've heard of this play. I've heard of the Dugout.
Yeah, we've got to figure that out because I've got friends there, and there's I've got like, between the guitar fans, and I have my fans and friends in the LGBT community that want to come out and see it. So we got to find some kind of cool venue, and then I'll fly out there and we'll do it.
Yeah, actually, my wife may be able to recommend a place where you could go. So,
okay,
she's done some stuff in the city. Actually, probably more in the city than I have. So, but yeah, for sure, Jim can give you my information and be willing to recommend some places. So,
yeah, and of course, down here in Virginia Beach in the summertime, there are tons.
Well, you get to New York quite a bit, Jim. You might be able to go see.
I do, but I think
your native environment.
I think that Mrs. Smith would work real well at the beach, especially in the summer. I mean, there's so many things that go on. I'm serious. I mean, the Calypso, and of course, you got the. I'll reach out to you because I've got friends in New York City, on Long Island, that come down here for summer gigs. So those are things that that would be really cool. I mean, if you were game for coming down to the South for a bit, it gets hot down here, and that's why I ask, because people who are from the North, when they get down here, my brothers, for example, cannot stand it in the South in the summer. They have a hard time coming down here in the winter when it's in the 50s.
It's swampy, huh? Swampy.
Yeah, it is wet and it is sticky. I recommend you bring the guitar that you don't mind gets a little humid for a while.
Well, that's why I use the finger ease or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
thank you, boys, so much for having me on. This was an absolute pleasure. I hope it was helpful. Yeah. And I hope everyone will check out worldofsmith.com. And my EP and merch, you can get that at mrssmith.merchnow.com. And I'm sure you'll put all the links and all that stuff.
Yes, it'll all be in the show notes
as well.
And and it'll live there in perpetuity. And if there's anything you want to add special to the show notes, you can shoot it off to Jim, and I'll make sure that it gets up there.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
With that being said, I've been David.
I've been Jim.
And I've been Mrs. Meow.
And we have been the Practical Guitarists.
Yes, we have.